Well, it's that time again. That time when we jump in our four-wheel drive, put on our muck boots, drive through the disaster-ridden landscape that is the current disaster that's happening in our southern states. Try and sort out the truth about what's happening with FEMA and some of the other disaster response that's happening. I'm sure you probably already heard quite a bit about what's going on down there, and unless you're Greg. Then you haven't heard anything at all.
That's true. My days off are my days off.
It's not a bad way to approach things, really. So yeah, it's been quite a ride since the hurricane landed. I guess it was 9 days ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly the date. I probably should look that up, but it's not really applicable to this other than the time frame.
Do you want to do the disclaimer first?
Oh, should we do the disclaimer?
Yeah, we probably
He's all
should.
excited about it.
I don't think I have the disclaimer. That's Ken's deal. Oh, there it is right there.
Yeah.
There you go. Rod, you can read it.
Okay.
Down at the bottom.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the respective speakers and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, policies, or doctrines of Bethel Baptist Church and its members.
Well, I'm glad Rod was here to save us, which I should say that, I'm joined today by Greg and by Rod, and we are three pastors walk into a bar. And, so that being said, it's been quite a mess down there. The flooding was amazing and terrifying all at the same time, and devastating. I mean, it truly is a massive disaster.
Water has so much power.
Well, yeah. I mean, the hydraulics of it are just crazy. I mean, I tell this story oftentimes when Hurricane Ivan went through down in Florida, when I still lived down in Florida. And hurricanes are kind of a way of life down there. I mean, it's like you kind of get used to them. A Category 4, you probably leave for that one. Category 5, you definitely evacuate for Category 5 because it's just going to annihilate everything. But when Ivan came through, he was a low 4, I would guess, maybe a mid-range 4 when he made landfall. I can't remember exactly. But the amount of devastation that occurred was just crazy. And I was working for a finance company at the time, and one of the things that I had to do when it was all over and done with was go out and assess some of our properties that we were invested in out on the beach. And luckily I had a four-wheel drive, because if I didn't have that, we wouldn't even have got out there. But drove out there, and as I was driving out there, there was a house on the right-hand side of the road, and what had happened is the storm surge, which is the water produced by the low pressure of the hurricane, pushed ahead of it. The storm surge was so high and so powerful that it got under this house that was on pylons, pulled it out of the ground, and rolled it across the street.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Wow.
It was crazy, man. People really do not respect the power of water. It always amazes me when I see people in flood situations and they try to drive across these flooded streets and stuff. It's like,
adios,
dude, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You got to stay out of that stuff.
I had a friend that worked with, actually had a house down in the Carolinas during one of those storms years ago. And so I called him, how's it going? He goes, he says, I used to be a block off the beach, but I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
His house.
You're in the water.
The houses in front of him were gone.
Yeah.
Just totally wiped him out. So now he's got beachfront
Yeah,
property.
they are powerful, and this storm was insane. It hit right around Tampa, came up through Florida, went through the southern states, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and it created a level of flooding that no one was prepared for. A lot of areas in North Carolina had been saturated by a lot of rain already, so it was waiting to happen, which I don't know. To me, if you are a federal emergency management association, you should have people tracking these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you know that there's an area that has been saturated with a lot of rain and you know that there's a hurricane coming through, you would think that you would already have assets in place to pull in
staged
like the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you think about the pole line workers. They were there before this hit.
Well, they were ready.
So they're already staging. So if that's a group doing that, why is FEMA not doing the same?
Well, and the real question about the response time is like there are thousands of National Guard troops that are ready to go in, but they have not been released to go in yet by FEMA for whatever reason. And you could actually airlift those guys into these locations via helicopter. I mean, military has helicopters. Mm-hmm. You could fly a group of men in, lower them down, drop them off with the guys and the supplies that they need to take care of that particular region. You could have a reserve group in each of these decimated towns helping out however they can. You could have done that 5 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would the governors? I mean, the governors have the authority to put.
It doesn't matter.
FEMA will say no.
Doesn't matter. It's a federally declared emergency. That puts it under federal jurisdiction.
So that takes the state out of the picture, and
pretty much. I mean, the state's still involved, but once it turns over to the federal agencies, then it's the federal agency's responsibility. However, they claim to work with local agencies, which they do. They employ the sheriff's department and the local search and rescue and different NGOs that happen to be in the area. They do coordinate and work with those guys. But we're 9 days in, and we were just watching a report from a reporter that is in the area, and he was saying that there's no FEMA, there's no troops, there's nobody here. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, devastated and with no relief in sight.
Yeah,
was he in Carolina or was he in Florida?
Oh, he would have to have been. He was in North Carolina, because of just based on the flooding.
Yeah,
right. But I'm looking at like how much that FEMA has already claimed to have spent on this recovery effort. And as of October 6th of 2024, the federal assistance for survivors has now surpassed $137 million, with FEMA's mission remaining steadfast in helping communities recover and rebuild. The FEMA administrator Deanne Criswell is leading one of the largest mobilizations of federal personnel, partners, and resources in recent history to heed the call of helping survivors and bolstering efforts across all levels of government. Okay, where are they? Where are they? I mean, if you're bolstering this massive movement of federal personnel, partners, and resources, where are they at? The agency is actively working alongside local and tribal partners to assess damage and support support those affected by the disaster. Nearly 7,000 personnel from across federal workforce are deployed, including FEMA staff. To date, FEMA has shipped over 14 million meals, more than 13.9 million liters of water, 157 generators, and more than 505,000 tarps.
Is that what's on the road to go there, or they're stating it's on the ground?
They're saying that is what has been shipped.
Wow.
I'm not sure that they've received that or not, but that's what they're saying. And I guess my question is like, if you've spent $137 million on this disaster already, where is that at? And why are we getting so many people from the area getting online and saying that there's nothing there? You know, I mean, it seems like seems to be a disparity between what is going on and what FEMA is claiming.
So right now there's been more help by private and by churches than there has anybody seen FEMA.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hands down.
Yeah.
Well, that's not a bad
And then
thing.
you have NGOs like the helicopter guys. They have a thing in North Carolina where there's a group of guys who they have helicopters and they've gone out and they've scouted out areas and cleared out areas to land just in case there is an emergency. They've got it all mapped out, man. They were ready to rock and roll day of, which is pretty amazing. Which is an interesting side note to all of this. You know, it's like, why are we paying the federal government agency to go in there and do things when you already have assets there? You could just be providing them with federal money, saying, here, take care of your gas, take care of your food, take care of your people, make sure that people get taken care of. If you need anything else, let us know. You know, why are we waiting for federal employees to get there to handle anything?
Sad thing is that justifies a paycheck.
Well, that's just it. And I think I heard one lady say, I wonder if I could find that. It's interesting what she said. I don't remember if she had any language on this. So fair warning to those that are out there listening. I don't want to put you in a position to where you listen to cursing after Greg's,
sermon.
Sermon that I missed.
But it is possible that she might be telling the truth here. So, anyways, this is 2 minutes long. This is a girl. She's in North Carolina. And she's talking about some of the things that are going on there and why the federal government is even involved.
She is why we have the disclaimer then.
Yes, exactly correct. Yeah. So
the tragedy in North Carolina is just highlighting the fact that the government is nothing but violent middlemen, just geriatric criminals who basically do nothing but step in between the interactions of average Americans to justify their existence. People always say, we need the government, they protect us, yet you can't sell lemonade without a permit, you can't braid hair or feed the homeless without a license, and you can't help people stuck in a disaster zone without food, water, or medical care without the threat of arrest. We have Americans with resources, helicopters, boats, supplies, and the gumption to get it done who are being threatened with arrest if they continue to try to help or rescue people. Why? Well, because the government needs to justify its existence in order to keep existing. It's not about helping people. It's about letting everyone know we're the ones that keep you safe from the world. They can't have average citizens helping each other, because if they did, then the average citizens might look around and go, hey, we actually got this done in way less time, way less money, and way more efficiently than we've ever seen the government do anything. So why are we paying you again? Why are we listening
fair
to
question,
you again?
right?
Why are we allowing you to lord over us again? Why are we allowing you to threaten us with violence again? Why are we allowing you to send all of our resources to places like Ukraine and Israel again? All while
We'll talk
our
about
fellow
that.
Americans suffer? Yeah, the government can't have that. They thrive on the power that they siphon from our daily interactions and disasters like North Carolina, all while telling us it's for our own good. They need us to need them, and they'll do whatever it takes to maintain that dependency, even if it's the threat of violence or throwing you in a cage, even if it's allowing Americans to waste away in a disaster zone just for the sake of saving face. The next time you hear a politician talking about the greater good and working for you and public service.
So the one thing that I couldn't find is I couldn't find any verifiable evidence that people are being arrested for trying to help.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's happening. I think that they're probably being turned away in certain situations. And the reason that I think that I know that is because of this guy who owns a trucking company with dump trucks, and he has been cleaning up debris. Right. And so this is what he had to say about what was going on the ground. And these are important because it helps to establish context with what people are seeing versus what FEMA is saying, because we're going to get into FEMA's kind of rumor response. They built a whole website on rumor response about what's going on here. So let's listen to this guy. I forget his name. I don't know if he actually gives you his name on this. But he owns a trucking company in that area.
Guys, I am not a big fan of videos, and this is completely unscripted, but this is something very important for all of St. Pete, all Pinellas County, probably
So
all
this
of
is in Florida.
because there are other areas that were impacted by the storm. This is seriously something I need you guys to watch and definitely share. I don't know if you can share a Facebook Live thing, but this is important information about what's going on from the storm and how FEMA's gotten involved. So, as you know, I own a fleet of dump trailers and I rent them out to people. Well, they've been insanely busy, and
I don't know why we would know that.
No.
Well, if he's a local guy,
I mean,
he might
maybe
be very popular.
maybe he's trying to talk to local people, but it was weird to me that he said, "As you know," it's like, no, I don't know that. Why would I know that? I have no idea who you are.
We're in Idaho.
It's like,
He's in Florida.
I've never used your trucks before. Who are you? Anyways,
the line at the landfill has been 2 to 3 hours long. Well, yesterday we were informed that the landfill was no longer going to be accepting storm debris. We all said, what the hell? What kind of sense does that make? So they said that FEMA was going to be setting up free dump zones and that we'd go and empty our loads there. So I said, okay, that's great. You know, we won't have to charge the client a dump fee. We can hopefully have a higher turnover rate and help more people. All is good. They said that information was supposed to be released last night on some of the city's websites. Well, I went to St. Pete's website. I went to Pinellas County website. I went to the dumps website. Nothing was there. I went to FEMA's website. Nothing was there. And this morning, I said, okay, well, maybe they didn't get it set up in time, and we need to still go to the landfill. So 4:30, got up, hooked up some trailers, headed to the landfill. They had a sheriff there turning people away and saying, you cannot dump here. And I said, well, where am I supposed to go? And he said, you know, there's no information online. I said, go online, find the FEMA website. I said, you pull out your phone, you show me where it is. And they started going through it, and then they said, you got to get out of here. You're obstructing traffic, and you can either leave right now or you can leave in the back of the sheriff car. So I pulled away. I went to what's called a transfer station. It's much more expensive. It's a fee that has to be passed on to the client. Otherwise, I would literally be operating at a loss. And they said that FEMA has come in and shut down the landfill, shut down the waste management's transfer station, and that we were not allowed to dump there, and we had to go to these FEMA sites. I said, well, where are these FEMA sites? No one can tell us. And they still didn't have the information. So I decided to call one of the biggest companies in the area, definitely a competitor. And I said, look, I'm a smaller business, and I'm curious, do you guys know where we're supposed to empty the storm debris? And I apparently got on the phone with someone pretty high up in the company. I don't know if it was the owner or the owner's son, but he was really well informed, pretty pissed off about the situation. He started to laugh and said, yeah, there's 3 dump sites set up by FEMA, and they're for resident use only. You cannot go in there with a commercial grade truck. You cannot go in there with a commercial grade trailer. You can't go in there with anything with any lettering on it. And they had asked them, well, what do you suggest that we do with the thousands of bins that we have rented out, full of trash, ready to go to the landfill right now? And they said, dump it back in the people's driveways. FEMA will get around to cleaning up on our own. So he said, what do you mean FEMA's going to clean up? They said, over the course of the next year, FEMA will be picking up all the trash. So in the meantime, over the course of the next year, and this is from personal eyewitness thing, as I was dropping off dump trailers, within 2 days, there's mold inside people's homes. That mold doesn't stop growing just because you take the trash out and you put it at the road. It's going to be growing at the road. Today, when I was driving through Shore Acres down Overlook Drive and Shore Acres Boulevard, there are dozens of rats hopping from pile to pile. It is an absolute breeding ground. And they want all that stuff to sit there for a year while they clean up. We got all the stuff picked up. It's in bins. We're ready to go to the landfill, and they're refusing us at the landfill, and they're suggesting that we take this stuff back and dump it in your yards. We need you to call the city, call the mayor, call FEMA, call the Pinellas County landfill, call Governor Ron DeSantis. Speak up. Otherwise, we're going to be staring at this trash for over a year. That's insane. This isn't about making money. I dropped my prices to help people out. I just want to get St. Pete cleaned back up.
so yeah, then he goes on a little rant about how he's trying to help. To be fair, we don't know if they meant a fiscal year or if they meant for the rest of the year or what. You know what I mean? It's like,
Or we're cleaning up now, but it's going to take a year.
to me, the reason that these videos are important is not necessarily because of the content that they're sharing, but it illustrates their frustration. Because what he's saying may not be 100% correct, but his frustration is 100% real.
Correct.
And you don't get that level of frustration if things are made easily accessible for you, and you're able to actually do what you need to do to respond to the disaster. Those kind of things happen when you're frustrated and you're aggravated, and you got all these bins full of debris, house debris, that they're trying to move out and get to the landfill. And what are you going to do with all the trash when you pick it up, FEMA? You're going to take it to the landfill. So why are we not already doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, make it make sense.
It goes back to the gal before him.
Exactly.
Saying they want control.
Yep, exactly. It's like, we need you to understand that you need us. And that's the reason that I played her first, is because I think there's a large part of it that is true. They need you to understand that you need them, when in reality, there are enough NGOs and enough churches and enough city municipalities that if you were to give them the federal funding instead of funding the 7,000 FEMA employees, they could get the job done in half the time.
Yep.
Or less.
Mm-hmm.
But as is always the case, when you get a federal agency involved in anything, the bureaucracy slows it down to a crawl. And then the only people that are suffering are the people that are in need of the assistance. They're without houses. They've got people that are missing. It's like the death count's up to like 220. It's expected to go up to more than 1,000.
Hundreds unaccounted for.
Yeah,
at this point.
And there's a lot of things going on out there that you just really kind of need to be careful of, because in the environment that we live in, one of the things that people really like to do is they like to latch on to things like this, and they like to just start shouting things without there being like a full disclosure of truth and information. And one of the things that I feel like, if we're going to be believers in this conversation, we need to be talking about truth. And in all of the lies on both sides, there is enough truth to make a cogent argument about the inefficiency of FEMA in this discussion, without going into any of the kind of hyper excited kind of conspiracy things about BlackRock wanting to buy everybody's property because there's lithium in the ground, and that they were cloud seeding the hurricane to increase its strength so that it would devastate the land so that they could clear it out, there's so many of these things going around. In fact, there's so many rumors that FEMA produced a website to answer most of the larger rumors. And so what I thought I would do is I would go on their website and pull up their rumor response and go through it and just see, okay, well, what are they saying about the rumors, and what are the rumors? And if you have been paying attention to social media at all, particularly if you have like X or Rumble, you've heard a lot of what people are saying about the different things that are going on. So the first one is this. FEMA only provides loans to disaster survivors. So this surfaced when Kamala gave the announcement that they were giving $750 to disaster victims,
right,
to buy, essentials or whatever the case may be.
Where?
And that's another. There's a whole nother thing about how are they supposed to apply? They give them three. They're given 4 ways to apply. You can apply online. You can apply on the app. You can apply via phone call. You can apply.
Yeah. And how do you do that when you have none of
they
that
have no
available?
electricity.
Yeah.
They have no.
And so many of these communities are literally isolated.
But thankfully, Elon Musk stepped in and brought tasked a whole bunch of Starlink satellites to be over that area. And so there is accessible Starlink with emergency services that people can get to if they need to use the internet. And most of the cell services have been restored in most areas. There's still outage areas, and a good portion of the electrical. What I saw today is about 70% of the affected area in North Carolina had been restored. And they were still working on it. I remember when Ivan came through, we were without power for like a week and a half. And that was with all the linemen doing everything that they possibly could. The lack of electricity and services like that is not because FEMA's getting in the way. It's just because it's a massive undertaking. Yeah. And these linemen and these guys are working as hard as they can to get the job done. It's just a lot. They're rerunning most of those lines. And so...
Yeah, it's not picking up the old.
No.
It's having to run all new.
Yeah, most of it you're having to run all new, especially in a flood situation, because a lot of it's just been washed away.
You know, ice storm here was in the 90s, I think. Was interesting because many parts of Spokane were out of power for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They brought in, I don't even know who they were, counselors to help people deal with not having electricity for that amount of time. There are people freaking out, you know.
Wow.
And we're over here in North Idaho going,
that's
normal
really
thing.
Sad.
It's very sad. And I just was thinking that these people have lost literally everything, many of them, thousands of them. And their emotional stability at this point is just, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. And and then is it time to plug Samaritan's Purse?
Well, we can plug them throughout. Because,
yeah. We've got guys that are already signed up here at Athol Baptist Church, ready to go. This is an interesting thing. The earliest that they can go right now is November 3rd. Mm-hmm. There's so many volunteers that they're having to, schedule it basically and set up. It's not, you just don't go. You go and you have to have a place to sleep and eat. And
people genuinely want to do good things.
Yeah. Whether we're here in Idaho, whether we're in, North Carolina itself. Yeah. Those people that have not been adversely affected by the hurricane, they're the ones that want to jump right in. That's the ones we were talking about earlier. Yeah. We can do this. Let us do this.
Yeah. Well, getting back to this rumor, FEMA only provides loans for disaster survivors. That is actually not true. The $750, you can apply for that, and you can get that, and you can use it for, purchasing food or, whatever that you need for an immediate assistance. I don't know how quick that turnaround is on that. It seems like, you apply, then, it's looked at, and then you're approved based on whether or not, these circumstances or whatever. And then they either send you a check or they do direct deposit into your account for the $750.
And this is a non-loan.
It is a grant. Just like all their other stuff. So if you were to apply, say, for instance, for a grant to help with your house disaster repair, right? And you utilize that to get started on repairing your house. If your insurance came in and paid for your house to be replaced, you would have to pay that grant back.
Which makes sense.
That's the way that it works, right? And the $750 is the same way. Like if you get the $750 and then your insurance comes along and gives you $750 for the same thing, you would need to pay the $750 back. Now, how they police that, I have no idea. Or would they police it? Who knows? It's really nebulous. But people were reading the agreement that you sign when you take the $750, and they were looking at that and they were reading it as if it was a loan. And it is not a loan. It's a grant that should be paid back if you are compensated in other ways. So that's one thing that people kind of have just gone off the deep end with fussing about. And it's also just a really poor argument for what FEMA is doing, because it is like the only thing that FEMA is really doing. So really by highlighting it, you're just highlighting what FEMA is actually doing, which is not much, but in any case, it is what it is. But in most instances, it's just $750. In some instances, you do have to pay it back because it's a grant. Another rumor was that applying for the loan or applying for the grant multiple times will speed up the process. There's no such thing as speeding up a process in a government bureaucracy.
That would slow it down.
Yeah. It just doesn't happen. Applying multiple times not going to help you. Squeaky wheel doesn't get the greasing when you're talking about governmental agencies. They get to you when they get to you. You could look at our immigration courts and see that they have a backlog of like 8 million people, or 8 million cases. And so the time that it will take you this is one of the problems with immigration right now, is the time that you apply for your green card and till the time that you get your hearing to actually get your green card is so long that most people will be dead before they get their green card. That's crazy, isn't it? But
those illegal?
No, those are legal. Those are legal. They're
aliens?
applying for green cards, and you have to be legal to apply for a green card.
Well, because I know Adriana's mom and uncle, they came over in 56, and they had to do that. You had to have a sponsoring family, and you had to have a job.
There are mechanisms in place to prevent that. Now, what's happening is not on the federal level, but on the state level, a lot of those federal mandates are being circumvented. Mm-hmm. So like in California, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, a lot of these sanctuary states are ignoring the federal laws as far as what it means to be an immigrant and creating their own kind of mentalities as far as how to deal with that. So a lot of the angst is directed at the federal government in wrong ways in a lot of ways, but the way that it can be directed is just the porousness of our border is definitely the fault of the administration. Mm-hmm. That's their responsibility. What California does with the illegal immigrants that go into it is not the federal government's responsibility. That's California's responsibility. And if I were a Californian, I would be fed up.
Even though the federal government is putting them there.
Well, that's partly true. Mm-hmm. Actually, Texas does a lot of relocation as well. So Texas will actually load up a lot of illegal immigrants and move them to sanctuary states. So it's
pretty smart, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, when we say that, it sounds smart. When we say the federal government is doing that, it sounds nefarious.
Yeah.
So it depends on context, and so a lot of that's going on. The problem's not the busing them around or the moving them into locations, unless you're like looking at it from the scope of like election fraud or whatever. There's ways that you can look at that. They're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. The problem's not that. The problem is that the administration has just allowed the borders to be porous for so long that it's now created a perpetual problem that we're not going to be able to shake for the next decade.
Yep.
And so, there's that. Another rumor, the FAA is restricting access to airspace for Helene rescue and recovery operations. That is not true. There was a instance where the FAA secured an area, but it was because Biden was coming to visit the area, and they secured the airspace around Air Force One.
Which they're always going to do.
They're always going to do, which I would have said, maybe that's a good reason for him not to show up. Maybe that's maybe a better person to show up for that would be a senator or somebody who doesn't need all that security to kind of hamper things.
I wonder if it did hamper things. That's the other question.
That's the other question. In reality, it was like a 30-mile radius. Mm-hmm. So how much did it truly affect? I haven't seen any of the helicopter companies complaining about that. I've seen one helicopter guy that was saying that he was going to go out and do something. And a local fire chief said that he was going to have him arrested if he went out. Well, okay, fair enough. That's not FEMA.
No.
That's your local fire chief. So let's put the blame where that belongs. Mm-hmm. And quit making up stuff to villainize FEMA. There's plenty to villainize FEMA to make FEMA villainous without having to add like crazy stuff that doesn't even mean anything. So another rumor was that FEMA distributes aid based on demographic characteristics. This is a rumor that spread because Kamala Harris had gone online and she had said she had floated the idea that relief efforts should be equitably based, meaning that communities of color should receive help in more quantity and faster than white communities. And this was an idea that she floated. It's not policy nor law. That's not, if you go onto FEMA's website and you look at what FEMA has done, you know what I mean? I was there in Ivan when it hit in Florida, and there was no like racial equity kind of stuff going on then. And if you look at the pictures of what's going on in North Carolina, there are black people, white people, Asian people. There are just all kinds of people getting help. Nobody's being preferentially treated over another person. However, Kamala did float that idea. So if the blame goes to anyone for that rumor, it's her fault. You know, she should not be saying stupid things like that. Politicians should just quit saying stupid things.
Sometimes they should just quit talking.
Yeah, they should just not talk a lot of times.
Yeah. Is his mouth moving?
Yeah.
He's lying.
Here's another one. FEMA is in the process of confiscating Helene survivors' property. If I apply for disaster assistance and my land is deemed unlivable, my property will be seized. It's absolutely not true. Your property belongs to you. They may deem your property as being unlivable because it's destroyed, but the federal government has no ability to seize your personal property. That is a crime. And if you have a FEMA official that comes to your house and says that we're seizing your property, you just need to get a lawyer and say, no, you're not, and file a lawsuit. And there are plenty of lawyers, there are plenty of bloodsuckers out there that would love to take on a lawsuit against FEMA because FEMA will just settle. And so, that's just not a thing that happens. FEMA doesn't seize property. If anything, it would be the Department of Homeland Security that would seize property because FEMA is an agency of the Department of Homeland Security. So, you should know that too. But that's not a thing that's happening. And that maybe kind of goes in line with the whole BlackRock wanting to take your lithium property kind of thing. The truth of it is that if BlackRock wanted your lithium that was underneath your house, they probably have already gotten it anyways because they own the mineral rights to your property. Not a lot of people understand that just because you own your property doesn't mean that you own your mineral rights.
You actually don't have your water rights or mineral rights unless you file for them.
Yep.
Idaho's no different.
Well, it's like that in Idaho. So if you strike oil on your property and you think that you're going to collect that money, not necessarily.
You better get your mineral rights first.
The person that owns your mineral rights is going to get that oil. So they don't need to seize your property to get the lithium under your house. All they need to do is buy the mineral rights because the majority of those people probably don't own the mineral rights. And even if they do, if you offered them a couple $100,000, they'd sell it without any kind of seizure needed.
Yeah.
So BlackRock's not sending hurricanes to destroy stuff to buy your mineral rights. That's not a thing.
Nope.
They'll just buy it. And the other argument might be, well, they're in order to get the lithium, you have to strip mine. Well, true enough, right? So you would have to buy their property if it's going to be strip mined. Well, do you really think that BlackRock's going to balk at buying your property for current values? And if, like, say, for instance, they sent a hurricane through and it destroyed your property and they offered you $50,000 for your property that had a $400,000 home sitting on it, guess what you can do?
No.
You can say no.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to sell to them. They can offer. They don't have to sell. You say, well, they weaponized the hurricane. Okay, we'll prove that. If you can prove that, then you can sue them. And there will be criminal charges.
There will be many people suing them if they can prove it.
Yes. And so, don't just spout stuff off. Do something about it. It's easy to just say things, but doing things is different. Another rumor, FEMA is no longer accepting applications for housing assistance. And this spawns from Mayorkas saying that they're going to run out of money. That's not uncommon. They always run out of money. Their annual budget for FEMA is $30 billion. The fund for emergencies is less than that. And they have already spent, they just reached the end of their fiscal year. And so they have already spent a majority of that on all the wildfires and all the floods and all the heat and all the things that have happened over the last, but $30 billion is across the board on all their programs. That's not disaster. That's not disaster fund. That's a completely different. We'll get into that in a second. When we talk about this idea that FEMA doesn't have enough money to provide assistance for Helene, the truth of it is that they don't. And one of the arguments is that, well, they've spent all the disaster fund, and this is what Trump said. They spent the disaster fund on illegal immigrants, which is not true.
Two different departments.
Yeah. When the White House press secretary, she came on and she had made a comment about that particular issue. I'll play it for you so you can hear what she said, because people framed this as if she was saying that it was not true, that they did spend FEMA money on immigrants, which they did, but it was not disaster fund money. So here is the White House press secretary speaking to that issue.
It's just categorically false. No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants.
That is a true statement. He did not divert disaster funds.
FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants.
So that last piece was her talking about the immigrant crisis, quote unquote, and how FEMA was responding to that. Well, FEMA supports that out of something completely different, and it is called, let me get it here. It is called the, give me a second and I'll find it, because I had it written down here. Shelter and Services Program is what that's called. And it's separate from the disaster fund. And that Shelter and Services Program is what was utilized to aid the immigrant crisis with social services or whatever the case may be. Now, here's the interesting thing. That fund, over the last 2 years, up to October 6th, has spent $600 million in just housing and services. That doesn't include the stuff that they have spent over with housing and services. The total amount that has been spent on the immigrant crisis by FEMA is over $1 billion at this point. And that's as of October 6th, they claim to have spent $137 million on the disaster response. Now, those are two different funds. However, FEMA's budget is $30 billion annually. Where is all this money? I mean, between these two things, we're talking about just over $1 billion.
So where's the other 29?
Where's the other $29 billion that is supposed to be for whatever federal emergency management? Like, where is all that at? And so, you know, you have fires, you have wildfires, you have, heat waves, you have all this other stuff going on. Okay, well, fair enough. Is that $29 billion worth of stuff?
Where do we look for that? I mean,
that's a great question. You can actually go on to FEMA's website and you can pull up this fund the shelter and services program under their documentation, and you can go and line by line, you can look at everything that was spent in that and see who received money for that. However, I'm not clear as to where the other $29 billion went. It's just not that clear. Now, I didn't do a heap of research to find out, quite honestly, because in the scope of the kind of crisis that's going on in North Carolina, it really doesn't matter. Because ultimately speaking, why is the Federal Emergency Management Association or administration taking care of people who enter into our country illegally anyways?
Yes.
Period. I mean, that shouldn't even be a thing. It's like, well, aren't we going to take care of those people? I mean, it's like, isn't it a crime isn't it wrong biblically to turn away from people in need if it's within your power to help them? Okay, well, it's not within their power to help them. That is not what they do. They do not help foreign nationals. That's not what that's not what FEMA does. FEMA helps national emergencies. It's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They manage federal emergencies.
Emergency.
Yes, that is not an emergency.
No.
It's a crisis maybe.
But illegal is not an emergency.
But if you were a state that's bringing them in there, that's not my problem. That's your problem.
Because that goes back to that lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute emergency on mine.
Exactly.
Well, that's what they've done.
So, there is like all these little pieces that like when you start putting it together. But the thing about it is that if you listen to like what Trump says, Trump even said specifically that they diverted funds from the emergency fund in order to fund the illegal immigrant crisis. And that's technically not even true. However, that wouldn't be weird because they do that kind of stuff all the time. In fact, Trump did that when he was in office. He diverted funds to the border from FEMA.
And so it was an emergency
to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't be uncommon. That's not a great argument.
But it's an argument they're using right now.
But it is an argument that they're using because it's sensational and it makes people livid and it gets people outraged and they don't think.
And it takes a focus off Biden and puts it on Trump again.
Yeah.
As a negative.
And people.
A sound bite.
Yeah, it's a sound bite. And that's what people are driven by these days is sound bites and video feeds and moments like that. And so, I mean, that there's pieces of that is true. There's pieces of that that's not true. To me, the bigger argument is why are we at $137 million in North Carolina and not at $10 billion?
Yeah.
That would be my question. You have a budget of $30 billion. Why are we not spent $1 billion getting helicopters flown in there, getting our National Guard put in there, hiring trucking companies with bulldozers to bulldoze pathways for semis to be in there? I mean, you could do a lot with $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a strange question. I have no way of knowing this answer, but when FEMA does allow National Guard to go in, does FEMA now pay the National Guard bill or does the state pay the National Guard bill?
Well, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know.
Because that would raise their expenditures up, saying, "Okay, state, we're the one telling them that they have to be in there, therefore we're paying that bill."
Yeah, I don't even know whose jurisdiction they would fall under. You would think that they would still be under the governor's leadership, but who knows? Maybe.
Just thinking back on some of the stuff that we reviewed here, if FEMA runs out of money, are they then at that point going to drop all the barriers to the local?
No, they won't. They won't
help?
run out of money because what they'll do is they already are in the process of putting in a new appropriations bill for an additional $20 billion for FEMA. They've already done that once this year. So FEMA's actually up to like $50 billion actually. Mm-hmm. But now they're going to process another $20 billion. So that'll put them at $70 billion for the year. And where's all this money going?
Well, and with the current rhetoric that we're kind of talking about, they are going to continue to have control. over this situation.
Well, that's the goal. And to be fair, I mean, you don't want just a bunch of people just going into a community and doing whatever the heck they want. I mean, that's not helpful. There are people that I've seen on X, and they will say, "Man, I'll take 2 rednecks on a 4-wheeler over 5 guys with a PhD any day of the week, because they'll get the job done." It's like, okay, well, they'll get the job done until you got 50 of them just doing whatever they want, and then they're causing more harm than good, and they don't realize it. They're just trying to do a good thing, but without good leadership, it begins to fall apart. It turns into chaos.
Well, there's the key. Is FEMA good leadership?
The answer to that question is no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they're terrible leadership.
So it has to go to the local mayors, governors, city councils.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the best way to handle that was if you wanted to have a federal emergency fund that was available to take care of these massive disasters like that. That's great. Taxpayers would love to contribute to that. However, to put a federal bureaucracy in charge of it only slows the process down. So my thinking would be, if you have NGOs on the area, Samaritan's Purse, these helicopter agencies, these special forces companies that are coming in, putting up clinics,
even the Red Cross,
trucking companies, Red Cross, you got all these different kind of groups that are going in there to help. Instead of tying up all that money in $750 applicable grants, give that money to those NGOs and say, here's a check. Go do what you need to do with your people and get the job done. You've already got assets on the ground. Why are we paying to bring more assets on the ground when you have all the assets on the ground that you need? I mean, for heaven's sake, Samaritan's Purse has a backlog of volunteers, so much so that we can't even get our people there until November.
Right.
There's not a shortage of people wanting to do things.
And every state has an OES department. Every state has an OES. So FEMA is stepping in and saying, okay, state of North Carolina, okay, state of Florida, we will fund you to bring these people in. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Much more sense.
Yeah.
So I say, make the overview of this recovery effort local.
Yes.
Not government.
And have the conversation that we don't need FEMA as a
Right.
massive organization.
Local knows what's going on in their backyard.
Yeah, and they know the community.
Right.
They know all them helicopter pilots. It's amazing. Like when they were interviewing him, he had a map behind him. And on that map behind him were all these dots and nodes where they had already gone out and cleared out areas and made landing pads in these remote places that they could land their helicopters to help people. That had already been done. It's already there. The topographical map, all the data is already there. If you wanted to fly National Guardsmen in there, all you got to do is say, hey, where's that landing zone at? Here's the GPS coordinates. Yeah. And you're done. No FEMA needed.
Nope.
If FEMA wants to support their fuel efforts and support the feeding of the people that are doing the work, and then also pay for supplies for them to deliver, hey, great. Let's do that. And if you want a FEMA person down there kind of helping to manage and facilitate all that to help the organizations, and you want to implant a administrator to help them to navigate that process, that would be helpful too. But having a group of people come in there and just take over and say, hey, look, this is the way things are going to be, that's just ridiculous. No federal government agency has ever been that good at handling anything. Ever.
Because you look at Samaritan's Purse, and they bring truckloads in, and they've got their trailers right there. They're ready to give you showers. They're ready to give you food. They're ready to do these things. But FEMA is going to bring people from out of state in. It's going to take time to truck it there. That equipment's already there to use it.
If they ever bring it. I mean, it's not even there yet. It's being shipped.
And there's
whatever that means.
There's your $1 million.
And to be honest, 147 generators, what the heck's that going to do? You got 4 states that are without power. What are you going to do with 147 generators?
That won't even help one state.
147 families is really what that will down to, which is great for those 147. But you're right. It's just a drop.
And in the scope of a $30 billion budget, 147 generators is nothing.
Now, of course, I don't know how big that generator is. I don't know if they're bringing in semi-sized generators or they're bringing in household generators.
Fair enough.
But even
Yeah,
at
fair
that, to the infrastructure's down.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, if you had a
in most of these
generator that was
places.
big enough to run an entire neighborhood or an entire like
Small town.
emergency services area, that might be, beneficial.
You know,
But still, you would need a lot more than 147.
Oh, yeah, operate a school where you can have people living in for a while or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So another rumor was that they were asking for cash donations and turning away volunteers. They're not going to turn away volunteers, nor can they force you to leave. That's something that I just discovered.
FEMA cannot.
They can't force you to leave. In fact, a former military company, or a company of former military guys, veterans, special forces guys, and did an interview with Glenn Beck, and they had set up a medical clinic in a tent, and they were giving insulin, they were giving triage, they were doing just like first aid stuff, hydration IVs, things like that. And a FEMA representative, the guy said, now this is what he said in an interview, but he said that a FEMA representative came and told them that they had to shut down because they did not have the proper licensing to do that. And he told her no. And she walked away.
Okay, so the rumor was that they're telling people that they have to leave. They can't do that. So they're talking about the people coming in to help.
Apparently that's what they're saying, but we have not had any. I've not seen them turn away any volunteers that wanted to go help. Now, could that be happening in the micro that we're not seeing?
Yeah.
Possibly. Are people on the ground saying that that's happening?
Yes.
Yes. Is it verifiable? No. But in the scope of the way that they manage things, it is certainly plausible that they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you for a certainty that they do turn people away, though. And the reason that I know that is because when we had the Bayview fires,
Yes,
we were taking water and food from the Athol community here at Athol Baptist Church. We were taking it to Bayview and dropping it off at the Bayview Civic Center or the Bayview Community Center
and the fire station.
And the firemen were using that water and food to support the efforts to put that fire out. An emergency was declared and FEMA showed up. And when FEMA showed up, we were delivering water in a pickup truck, and we were stopped by law enforcement and told that we could not enter any longer. And we were turned away.
Matter of fact, that's how I knew we had a third floor here, because we were bringing all that back upstairs.
Yep. And we still have some of that up there that Greg won't drink because the plastics make it undrinkable, apparently.
It tastes funny.
We have a disagreement on that. I feel like if people are desperate enough, they're going to drink it. Yeah. It's like, if you're thirsty,
water,
you're going to drink plastic-flavored water.
Should not have an expiration date, but when you put it in plastic, it does.
Yeah, water doesn't have the expiration date. It's the plastic that has the expiration date.
I don't know about that either. I think that's just a FDA thing to get it off the shelves.
It's FEMA controlled.
Yeah, something like that.
The water in our attic is FEMA controlled.
There have been reports that FEMA has been going and confiscating supplies. Maybe that's happening. Maybe it's not. We didn't have FEMA coming here to get our water.
No.
So I can't attest to whether that's true or not.
You know, one of the things that we have to think about here, too, is that when we say FEMA, it's an entity, yes, but it's made up of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like we're saying every person that works for FEMA is this non-caring person that has got only one thing in mind, and that's the push of the federal government. And I don't believe that. I think there's people in FEMA that are like, this isn't right. They're going to do the right thing.
Maybe if you have a really pessimistic view, I don't see it that way. Like when I say FEMA, I'm not saying that every employee that works for FEMA is a terrible person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that the organization, I'm talking about
Yeah.
the organization itself.
The Mayorkas,
and that's what I'm saying.
Mayorkas down.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the people doing the actual work on the ground, hands and feet, they're people.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
people.
They're looking at devastation, and they want to help out.
They're doing what they're told,
Mhm.
and they think that they're doing the right thing. In a lot of ways, they are doing the right thing. In some ways, maybe they're not doing the right thing.
And
Who
they
knows?
have policies and procedures. They have to follow that.
Sure.
The county doesn't.
It's their job. They want to keep it.
I remember when they were going to get in Gatorade, and the local fire said, "We have 2 pallets." They said, "We can't use yours. 2 pallets of Gatorade. We can't use yours. We have to buy our own." That's just a strange comment, but they have policies for a reason, and we don't know them all.
So there was a news report put out by Newsweek yesterday, and they were citing a interview that CNN did Sunday afternoon with volunteer pilots and relief organizers that were talking about FEMA's response to Hurricane Helene. And in that interview, they said this, quote, "Still no FEMA, still no military," in North Carolina, which
Nine
was
days
ravaged.
later.
And this is 9 days later.
I'm sure there's places that heck, they can't even get people to
Well,
them right now without a helicopter.
Yeah, I mean, and Glenn Beck went to a place that had a FEMA trailer where they were doing administrative stuff. But still in all, right? I'm gonna make an argument here in a minute that I think is a better argument for the inefficiency of FEMA, and more importantly, to the point, the inefficiency of our federal government to deal with this particular crisis, and the hypocrisy of not dealing with it. It's vile, and I think it needs to be called out. The failing in this whole thing, the very fact that we don't have anybody on the ground as of October 6th, is an abysmal statement. It's like, where is all this help? Where's the $29 billion of aid? Are we waiting on a $20 billion addition? Where's that money going? It's like there just seems to be some disparities in how much money they have and where it's all being spent. And tracking that down seems to be harder than you might think. And what's FEMA doing with all this? It's like, what are they buying with all this?
Who made that statement?
This is a group of volunteer pilots and relief organizers.
Okay,
Is how it's stated on here. Now, I'm sure you can
to-
find the CNN interview. In fact, if you go to this Newsweek article, which is called "Still No FEMA, Still No Military, Volunteers Blast Helene Response" on CNN, it was published yesterday. You can still find this article, and in that article, there is a link to the CNN interview that you can watch. And it's just a group of pilots and people that are working there. They don't identify any one of them as being like the spokesperson, but between all of them, they're all in agreement. There's no FEMA, there's no military. They're not here, that they can see helping out. And so, what's going on, right? And so, that's kind of, and the article goes into great detail about, how much they have done. I mean, listen to this, right? Without federal assistance, a volunteer group uses planes and pilots to deliver life-saving supplies to people in need in more remote, inaccessible locations. Jackson, who is Doug Jackson, the chairman for Operation Airdrop, which is based out of North Carolina somewhere, Hickory Regional Airport, I think. But anyways, he said that they have flown, quote, 673 flights, delivering 400 pounds of supplies by air, 700,000 pounds by truck, for a total of 1.2 million pounds of supplies out of one airport. That's one NGO. In the days that it has taken FEMA to even think about showing up.
And they've already got stuff on the ground.
They've already been doing it. It's like, why are we not flying C-130s and cargo planes from our military into this airport to support this group to get more stuff. I mean, for heaven's sake, let's get some military helicopters in there and start flying those around. The reserve has helicopters. Let's get those going.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like, what in the world is going on? Why are we just in a holding pattern waiting for people to die? It doesn't make any sense.
And those pilots would love to be in the air.
And so that's kind of like, that's my argument. You know, it's like, it doesn't really matter where the funding is coming from. It doesn't really matter, you know, what funds are being moved around where. I don't care if you move funds from, you know, the you know, homeless relief fund or whatever, you know, whatever. We've got people that are in need and we're scrambling to figure out how to help them. Americans. These are taxpayers, voters, citizens,
fellow believers,
sovereigns of this United States of America. And FEMA is still not there.
Now, FEMA has not pushed the states out yet.
Well, they're not there. How could they?
That's what I'm saying. So they haven't pushed. So at least there's that benefit.
Everything that's happening is because of the NGOs and the states that are doing it. And yeah, there's issues, you know, where like that one fire chief told the guy he was going to be arrested if he flew again in there. It's like, okay, fire that guy, first of all. And then, you know, let the people do their work, you know, clear out the airspace so the NGOs can do their business, you know, because gosh, I mean, that number, 600,000 pounds by air, 300,000 pounds by air, 700,000 pounds by truck.
Yep.
Out of one airport.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
You got companies like Walmart and that are just running trucks every day trying to get them there.
They're trying to get stuff in there. If the federal government would just focus on clearing the way for these NGOs to do this,
it would work.
It would work beautifully. You know, just bring in, you know, 1,000 bulldozers.
And it's going to be almost, okay, I won't say impossible. It's going to be very hard to get them to change their ways because they have this full budget set up for an administration. And they don't want to give up that administration.
Yeah, full budget for Americans that's being partially used to pay for illegal immigrants.
Well, I mean, even the budget that's paying for their paychecks, they don't want to give that up. That's something they will fight to keep.
Yeah, no, it needs to be downsized intensely.
Yes.
I wonder if there is an effort already there where FEMA works with local NGOs in different parts of the country.
They do.
That's already in place.
They do that.
So that should be activated at this point. Because what we're talking about is why aren't they? Why aren't they? Well, they should be.
Yeah, but the thing is that this guy is saying that they're not showing up.
They're
doing everything on their own. And this whole article, he's like, at the end of it, they've been 9 days, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These pilots have been flying these flights. Mm-hmm. And he's like, we're exhausted. We need help. Yeah. Where are you at?
Is there a possibility, and I'll play both sides here on purpose, is there a possibility that the areas in which they're flying into, they're not seeing it, but they are
elsewhere?
20 counties up, 10 counties up? I mean, I don't know.
Well, Samaritan's Purse is involved. You know, they're already on there. I mean, they're located in North Carolina. Well, and so they have deployed.
And part of Boone was hit. So, yes, they are definitely.
In day one. So, they're out there. They're doing their thing. Their bulldozers are out there. Their trucks are out there.
There's all kinds of NGOs out there doing all kinds of great work. And God bless them. You know, that's how America gets things done.
That's right.
And for those of you that don't know, NGO is non-government organization.
Right. And a lot of these NGOs are nonprofits that are just doing the amazing work, right? Mm-hmm. But this guy, he's just basically stating that they have, for the last 9 days, they have done it all on their own. They brought the supplies into the airport. They have loaded the supplies onto the helicopters. They have trucked them out. They have flown them out. They have picked up survivors out in these remote areas. Mm-hmm. And FEMA has been nowhere to be found. No checks, no deliveries of support for the volunteer staff, no support pilots coming in, no military helicopters to take over the effort. nothing.
And I haven't heard even much about the Coast Guard. I mean, imagine they're working, but they haven't said much about them either.
There's nothing. I mean, what can they do? You know, I mean, it's like unless they're told by the governor to do something, well, the Coast Guard can't be deployed on U.S. soil either because they're armed forces.
Coast Guard can be deployed to do search and rescue.
Well, there you go. So there should be Coast Guard
Guard out
helicopters flying around and helping people. There should be video of that.
Right.
There's just not. Wow. There's not. There's no evidence of government involvement in a large degree in any video that I have seen in the last 9 days.
So it's all been private.
And the video we watched prior to coming on the show here, the reporter that is in some of these areas, and he pretty much said that there's no government involvement, and everything that he showed as relief was the local people doing their thing.
Now,
shovels and wheelbarrows.
Here's the other thing that is nefarious about this. So these are the arguments that I think that I would use. First of all, the Federal Emergency Management Agency does not need to be in the business of aiding felons that come across our borders illegally to implant themselves into states that give them funding to support their lifestyles. That is not a thing that taxpayers should be paying for.
Agreed.
If California wants to pay for that, hey, more power to you. But I don't want to pay for that as a taxpayer, nor does anybody in our community want to pay for that as a taxpayer. I mean, that's not something that we want. So, you know, I would say that the diversion of that $600 million to $1 billion to aid illegal immigrants in the last 2 years, if that were sitting in a fund, we could already have a majority of the problem in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida taken care of already.
Yes.
You write a check for $1 billion, things get done. You know, you could support these NGOs. You could have the military there. You could have the helicopters flying around. You have the Coast Guard helping people out. You could already be cleaning up the rivers at this point. But it's just not happening for whatever reason. Probably my conspiracy mind tells me that all that money has been stolen by suits that are in charge of that bureaucracy, and it's sitting in their bank accounts. That would be my conspiracy mind would say that, but that's only because I see what's happening in Ukraine.
Well, it's kind of sad when the Inspector General has to say there's $8 billion still in your fund when you're saying there's not. That's pretty scary.
Well, they don't know. They don't know what's in there. Yeah. So here's an interesting side note, right? For somehow we have been able to muster as a government $175 billion to send to Ukraine. Let that sink in for a second, because that's, oh gosh, I don't even know how to do the math on that. That's not like what they have utilized for disasters in the United States of America in its totality is not even 1% of that. I mean, like what? I don't understand the prioritization of this. Wait a minute. Yeah, I do.
When it's spent top down, it shouldn't be hard to figure out.
They kind of line this out, right? They say that that $175 billion has gone, right? And that's been in 3 different phases. So in 2024, there was a bill. In 2022, there was 2 bills that were passed. 3 bills, sorry. In 2022, there were 3 bills. $13.6 billion, $40.9 billion, $12.3 billion. There were 4, actually, and $47.4 billion in 2022. And then in 2024, there was an additional $61.3 billion, and now they're pushing for another $60 billion. And of that, they say that $33.3 billion of it went to support the budget of Ukraine. What the heck does that even mean?
Yeah.
Means you'll never be able to justify where it went.
Yeah. $69.8 billion went to weapons, equipment, and other military support. This is a war that we're not in, by the way.
Right.
Right? It's a proxy
Well,
war.
Yeah, we were just funding it.
Right? We're just funding it. And here's how we're funding it. Get ready for this list. This is insane.
Is it going to make us mad?
It-
Better.
in comparison to what's happening with the people in North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina and Florida, yeah, this is going to tick you off. All right, so far, we're at 10,000 Javelin anti-armor systems, 90,000 other anti-armor systems, 2,000 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, 9,000 TOW missiles, 40,000 grenade launchers and small arms, 400 million rounds of small arms ammunitions and grenades, 100,000 sets of body armor and helmets, night division devices, surveillance systems, thermal imagery systems, optics and laser rangefinders, C4 and other explosives, explosive ordnance disposal equipment, M18 A1 Claymore mines, anti-armor mines, mine clearing equipment, obstacle equipment, medical supplies, field equipment, chemical biological equipment, 18 armored bridging systems, rocket launchers and ammunitions, 25 millimeter ammunitions. That's just the infantry.
And we're not even there.
We're not even in this war. Here's our air defense: 1 Patriot air defense battery, 12 NASAM systems, Avenger air defense system, Hawk air defense system, laser-guided rocket system, AIM-7 missiles, RIM-7 missiles, AIM-9M missiles, anti-aircraft guns, equipment to integrate with Ukraine's systems, Vampire anti-drone system, anti-drone gun trucks, anti-drone laser-guided rockets, air defense systems, and anti-drone equipment. That's just air defense.
War is so good for the economy.
Air-to-ground missiles, high-speed anti-radiation, precision aerial munitions, 6,000 Zuni aircraft rockets, 20,000 Hydra 70 aircraft rockets.
And that's what we sent them. That's not what they bought with our money. Wow.
It's probably a combination of both. I'm not really sure. Here's our artillery that we've sent them. We've sent them 198 155 millimeter howitzers with 3 million rounds of ammunition. We've sent them 72 105 millimeter howitzers with 800,000 rounds of ammunition. We've sent them 10,000 203 millimeter rounds, 400,000 152 millimeter rounds. That list goes on. 47 120 millimeter mortar systems, 10 82 millimeter mortar systems, 112 81 millimeter mortar systems, 58 60 millimeter mortar systems, 400,000 mortar rounds, 39 HIMARS systems. That's just artillery. Now we get into tanks. We've sent them.
Wait, there's more.
We have sent them 200 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, 4 Bradley fire support team vehicles, 31 Abram tanks, 45 T-72B tanks, 189 Stryker armored personnel carriers, 300 M113 armored personnel carriers, 250 M1117 armored carriers, 300 armored medical treatment centers, 1,000 MRAP vehicles, and 120 and all the tank ammunition that goes with that. We've sent them 3,000 Humvees, 1,100 tactical vehicles, 200 light tactical vehicles, 80 trucks, 124 trailers, command post vehicles. I mean, the list goes on. We've sent them 20 M117 helicopters. We've sent them Switchblade drones, Ghost drones, 600 drones that can be used for surveillance and munitions. We've sent surveillance drones to the tune of a zillion of those. We've sent them 2 Harpoon coastal defense systems, 62 coastal riverline patrol boats, unmanned coastal defense systems, port harbor security systems, not including radar and communication systems. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. But we're not in a war with Russia. Don't worry. And people wonder why Putin is like thinking about nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Because technically we are in that war. We're supplying everything that they need.
In this report from the Council of Foreign Relations, it has a map of all the countries that are militarily supporting Ukraine, and it's like every NATO country is sending armaments to Ukraine and money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some videos that are coming out now where, and I'm only saying this because it's relevant to the amount of money. Right? There's videos coming out now that Russian troops are invading like Ukrainian strongholds, and they're opening up these like chest of drawers, and these chest of drawers are just filled to the gills with American currency, to the tune of millions of dollars just in these bunkers, just sitting there.
Wow.
Like people were just hoarding it, right? $170 billion we have sent to Ukraine. Meanwhile, this whole time, we've had all of these emergencies. Our Federal Emergency Management Agency is running out of money because it doesn't have enough money to support the current hurricane season. Okay, well, justify that. I mean, you could just have an argument about Israel. Like, how much have we spent in Israel as of October 7th when they started their war in Hamas? $12.5 billion.
$12.5 billion. That's it.
$12.5 billion to Israel. $170 billion to Ukraine. Now, given that it's gone on longer, for sure, it could get up there with that. I'm of the opinion that if you can't afford to support your people at home that are starving to death,
quit sending money.
You should not be sending money to Israel or Ukraine or anybody else, for that matter. I mean, I don't understand why it is that the world thinks that we're just supposed to be printing money to support all of their endeavors. Meanwhile, you have homeless veterans here that are starving on the streets. And
they get treated less than somebody that came over the border illegally.
Than the illegal aliens, yes. And somehow we're just supposed to ignore all of this stuff. And that's why, for the first time in a very long time, I stood in front of everybody yesterday and told them that they needed to register to vote. Because this election, I don't know that I can understate this. This election is probably the most important election of my lifetime.
Especially where we are now, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for being somebody that has said to you in the past, I'm thankful that you don't have a political stance on the podium, which I have still appreciated. We are at a point where you have to get out and vote, and you have to educate yourself. And it's not a matter of liking Kamala or not, or it's not a matter of liking Trump or not. It's a matter of you need to look at spiritually which one of those two is going to take us in a direction that's going to destroy you more.
Yeah. Well, when you have an administration that has been dedicated, and this goes across the board, like Republicans were on board with sending all this money to Ukraine. Let's not be mistaken. That was a bipartisan issue, right? And so we have been flippantly sending billions of American dollars over to a place that has no effect on us other than it's on the border of Russia, and we don't want to lose it to Russia. It's like, okay, fair enough. Maybe we should have held up to our end of the bargain and left Ukraine alone like Putin asked us to at the very beginning. But no, we've got to get in there and we got to put our assets in there and we got to get it started. And I am not unconvinced that it's just the military industrial complex pushing things to enrich themselves. That's a lot of money, man. Somebody's making that. And if that money is coming back in the form of paying for all of this equipment that we've sent over there, then who do you think's getting that?
Like I said, war is good
for
the economy.
It's good for the economy when you don't have Democrats running it, that's for sure.
Well, yeah.
But
redirection of the funds?
It can be, yeah. Mm-hmm. But
and the sad part is we have so many people on the opposite side of the coin that say it's okay to let's take away your Christian right. Well, if you want to keep seeing that happen, then just don't vote. And if you're thinking that voting for a third party is a wise decision, it's not, because if you're not voting for one or the other, you are voting for one or the other, period.
Pretty much.
There's really, this is only a two-party race.
Yeah. And if you choose to not vote because you can't by conscience vote for one, you're basically voting.
You're voting, and you're saying that your future doesn't matter as a Christian to have rights to be able to go out and talk to people.
Yeah, I mean, there are fundamental things that are different about both of these sides, and I'm going to side with the group that is is anti speech and censorship, that is anti gun legislation, and anti abortion.
Right.
You know, that's going to be the and fiscal spending. You know, what I mean, it's like that's such a big deal. You know, it's like the spending has got to get under control. We would have enough money for North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina and Florida if we hadn't already sent $190 million plus or $1 billion plus overseas to these places like Ukraine.
And I mentioned to you earlier too, I'm looking at Milton. Right now they said it's up to a 4 and it's possibly going to explode to a 5. And, they're Tampa, and that's going to get hit again, possibly. And, if we're not handling this, then how the heck are we going to?
Yeah, that's the Panhandle. Milton is in the Panhandle. That's just a few miles away from my old stomping grounds in Pensacola. So, that area is going to get hammered.
He's already a 5, right?
No, it's a 4. They said they're expecting it. It just hit a 4, and they're expecting it to hit a 5.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. Imagine that. And you're already short on funds. I mean, it's going to be bad. I mean, how do you even begin to think about supporting that? If you can't even get people to North Carolina, how do you even begin to think about supporting that?
Even at that, I'm thinking you've got people on the ground right now. And we talked earlier that, not on the cast, but it's going to, we're going to be there for 5 years rebuilding.
Oh, yeah.
And
Easy.
if Milton hits, where relief is already in place, do they have to pull that relief out so that it doesn't get destroyed?
Very good chance they're going to have to back out.
Yeah.
They're going to have to back out until after it's gone
just wait
through.
until it's over and go back in. That
Okay.
is a
So wait a minute. Maybe I'm
devastating
misunderstanding. Is the name of the hurricane Milton?
Name of the hurricane is Milton.
Okay. I thought that it was going to land in Milton, which Milton is a town on the Panhandle.
Oh, it may.
So that was I was mistaken there. If the hurricane's name is Milton, it depends on where it lands. If it lands in like Tampa, good grief.
That means I, J, K, and L have already taken place somewhere.
Yeah, they were probably tropical storms that died out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in any case, you want to hand me those papers right there? Because we're kind of at the end of it. We're already at an hour and 30. But Rod, you got any final words for our listeners?
Number 1, pray for those who are over there, those who are on the ground helping, and those who are hurting.
Yep.
When everything looks like it's against you, we know that there's only one place to go, and that's to God. And there are people there that don't even know him and feel that they don't need to know him. And now they're looking at it going, okay, I'm in a foxhole and I got to do something. So I can say our number 1 thing is to pray. And number 2 is keep the conversation down if you don't know the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good answer. Good word.
Yeah. Likewise, pray, vote.
Yes.
And if you are interested in serving in the Southeast via Samaritan's Purse, who we have partnered with several times in the past, let me know. Greg at athelbaptistchurch.org, and we'll get you on the team. You can do that on your own. We're going to try to put together a team so we can get a group of people going down together. But if you would, if that doesn't work out for you, I don't know those dates just yet. You can go online and you can go down on your own. Talk to me about funding. If you're one of those out there that in the past have said, I can't go, but I will send somebody, please contact me again. Let me know that you're willing to financially support someone else going in your place.
And I imagine this will be the first of quite a few groups that we send down there at this point.
Yep.
And if you choose to do that, just know that any funding that you send through the church, it will go into a budget that's the only thing that money will be used for.
Disaster relief.
Yep. Just make sure you mark it on your check.
Please do.
Yep.
All right. Well, I would say, just in closing, make sure that you base your argument in things that could be factually true. Like, don't base your argument off of things that you hear on X or you hear somebody else say. Go and look it up. Make sure that you've got your story straight. There's plenty that FEMA is doing that is wrong, that you don't need to exaggerate things for it to be true. And as far as our federal government is concerned, one of the best arguments is imagine if we had that $60 billion that we sent over to Ukraine that last time, and we just took that and instead threw that at this disaster and the next disaster. We could rebuild those communities in no time. But we lack the will because there's not enough money in that. Let's just be honest.
That's the key word.
There's not enough money in it.
Nope.
And so if the military-industrial complex was involved, I'm sure that we could get all the money that we needed going to these disasters. And that should tell you something about this administration. Food for thought. Well, that about does it for us today. As always, thank you for joining us. If you have a comment or a question or an idea for an episode, send us an email at 3p@atholbaptistchurch.org. If your idea gets used on the show, you could be the proud recipient of the now world-famous 3P coffee mug. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you to Athol Baptist Church and its members for their generous support of this ministry. And again, thank you for listening. And until next time, remember the Great Commission. Go into all the world, reach the lost with the gospel, and build disciples who can do the same. And with that, we are out.